I'll never forget the moment my mother slapped me, not because of the pain, though that was real, but because of the coldness in her eyes, the way she looked at me as though I had become a stranger in my own home. It was late. I was in the kitchen, staring at the message on my phone, "Meet me at the park tonight, I need to see you." That was from Lena. My heart was already pounding before I even saw her face. Lena was everything I wasn't supposed to want, and yet everything I couldn't resist. We'd been friends for years, best friends, really, but somewhere along the way it became more than that. When I told my mother I was meeting her, I didn't think it would be a problem. But when I walked into the living room, my mother was sitting there, her lips tight, her face pale as she gripped the armrest of the chair like it was the only thing holding her together. "You're not seeing her again," she said, her voice flat and sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. "I've heard the rumors." It was the first time she'd ever said Lena's name with such venom. I had no idea what rumors she was talking about until it hit me. Lena and I weren't just friends to this small town. We were an affront, a betrayal of everything they held sacred. Our love, though unspoken, was loud in the silence we shared. My mother, whose life had always been dictated by her unwavering faith, didn't just disapprove, she was terrified. And as she grabbed my phone from my hand and tossed it across the room, something inside me cracked. "You think you're the first to fall for someone like her?" My mother's voice shook, but not with fear, with rage. The truth hit me then, sharp as a dagger. My mother wasn't afraid for me. She was afraid of losing me to something that would tear our family apart. Before I could respond, she was already standing, the back of her hand cutting across my cheek, the sound of it like a thunderclap. It wasn't the first time my mother had hit me, but it was the first time I had felt it all the way through to my bones. For the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of her love, not as protection, but as a cage. "You think your love is real," she spat, her voice cracking with something far more fragile than hate. "It's an abomination, and you know what that means, don't you?" She didn't need to say the words aloud. In that moment, I realized she believed our love, mine and Lena's, wasn't just forbidden, it was evil. Her eyes burned with a kind of conviction I couldn't argue with. I wanted to scream, to tell her that my love was real, that it wasn't a sin, that it wasn't wrong. But the words stuck in my throat, caught between the silence of a mother's fear and a daughter's pain. I reached for the door, but before I could make my escape, she dropped her voice to a whisper that sliced through the air like a knife. "If you go to her, don't bother coming back." The words echoed in my head as I walked out, but what she didn't know was that leaving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Because for all her hate, for all her rejection, I couldn't stop loving Lena. I didn't go to the park that night. Instead, I walked aimlessly for hours, the streets blurring into a smudged canvas of shadows and lights. My chest ached, tight and raw, like someone had hollowed me out from the inside. It was strange how rejection can make you feel both invisible and hyper-aware, like the world around you is still spinning, but you're stuck, frozen in place. I didn't even care about the cold or the way the wind bit at my exposed skin. The only thing that mattered was Lena, her face, the way her dark eyes had softened when I kissed her last week, the quiet "I love you" that she hadn't said but I felt. That moment we shared wasn't supposed to be anything more than a fleeting mistake. It was supposed to be a goodbye, a way for us to keep the secret alive a little longer before everything fell apart. But it was everything, she was everything, and somehow, against all odds, it had become real. When I finally returned home, the house was silent. My mother's car was gone. I stood there in the doorway, not sure whether I should be relieved or terrified, and then I heard the faint sound of a phone vibrating against the counter. My heart skipped. I knew it was her, the only person who could still make my pulse race with a single message. I rushed to grab my phone, the screen lighting up with Lena's name. I stared at it for a long moment, my finger hovering over the text. "I miss you, please come back." The words sent a wave of warmth through me, but it was quickly followed by a crushing wave of guilt. I couldn't go back, not after everything that had happened, not after what my mother had said. And yet I couldn't stop myself from typing a reply, typing the words that had been lodged in my throat all night long. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Lena, I can't do this." I hit send before I could second guess myself. But the second I pressed that button, I knew it was a lie. The words didn't feel right. They weren't true. I wasn't sorry. I couldn't be, not for loving her, not for wanting to be with her. The truth was I was terrified, terrified of losing my family, terrified of the consequences of what we were doing, terrified of the world that would judge us for something that felt as simple as breathing. But none of that fear mattered when it came to Lena. She was my truth. And now, as I stood there in the cold light of my kitchen, the ache of her absence was unbearable. I stared at the message, wondering if she'd even read it yet, when suddenly a knock at the door sent my heart racing. My pulse thudded in my ears as I cautiously approached. I peeked through the peephole, not expecting anyone, and yet there she was. Lena standing on the other side, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic, as if she had been waiting for me to open that door for what felt like an eternity. Without a word, I swung it open. Her voice broke through the silence like glass shattering, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Mercy, you have to come with me. It's not just your mother. There's something bigger going on, something dangerous. You don't understand. I didn't understand. I only knew that for the first time since the slap, since the rejection, my heart was no longer aching. It was alive again. And maybe, just maybe, our love was worth fighting for, even against everything that tried to tear us apart. Lena's hands trembled as she gripped my wrist, pulling me out of the house without another word. Her urgency was palpable, as though the world was crumbling around us and everything depended on this one moment. I followed her without questioning, the cold air outside biting at my skin, but I barely noticed. All I could focus on was her wild, frantic energy, the way her breath came in short bursts, the way she was guiding me through the dark streets like she knew exactly where we were headed. It was only when we reached the edge of town, where the streetlights disappeared into the night, that I dared to speak. Lena, what's going on? What's happening? My voice was thick with confusion, but underneath it there was an undeniable pull. Something in her had changed. She wasn't just scared, she was running from something. But from what? She stopped abruptly, spinning to face me, her eyes wide with something between fear and determination. Mercy, you don't get it. It's not just about us anymore. It's bigger than that. Your mom, she's not the only one who's been watching us. My heart skipped a beat. The words she said didn't make sense, but the panic in her voice did. Who's been watching us? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lena's eyes flickered to the woods ahead, the dark shadows creeping in from the tree line. Then she pulled me into the thicket of trees, her grip on my arm tightening. The town, the church, them, I found something I wasn't supposed to. I had no idea what she was talking about. She was shaking now, her voice trembling with something deeper than fear. Lena, stop, just tell me what's going on. But she wasn't listening. She was pulling me faster now, her pace growing frantic, and my heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to keep up. I went to the old church tonight, she continued, her words coming out in a rush. The one no one talks about. I found a ledger, and it has our names in it. Our names, Mercy, you and me. A chill ran through me at the mention of the church. The building had been abandoned for years, condemned after a scandal tore apart the heart of the town. But the idea that our names were in some hidden book tied to something dark and dangerous made the world spin. What do you mean? How could they? I started, but my voice faltered as Lena grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the eyes, her gaze intense, as if she was trying to will me to understand. They know, Mercy, they know, the church. It's not just a building, it's a network, a secret society that monitors everyone, everything. They've been watching us for months, waiting for the moment we would slip, and tonight they found us. Her words hit like a physical blow. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and for the first time in my life, I realized that what Lena and I shared wasn't just forbidden, it was a threat. A dangerous, insidious thing that could unravel our entire world. My heart pounded, my mind racing to catch up with the revelation, but as I looked into Lena's face, something else took hold of me. The fear in her eyes mirrored my own. We were in this together, and whatever was coming for us, whatever they were planning, I would face it with her, no matter the cost. The forest around us felt suffocating, the trees pressing in like silent witnesses to the chaos unraveling between us. Lena's grip on my arm didn't loosen, and I could feel her heart racing through the thin fabric of my jacket. We walked in silence for what felt like hours, our footsteps soft on the damp ground, every rustle of the leaves making me flinch as if we were being hunted. But I couldn't shake the burning question that lingered in my mind. What was in that ledger? What could possibly link us to something so sinister, so powerful? I wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the look on Lena's face, wild, desperate, told me that whatever was coming next, it would be worse than I could imagine. Finally, we reached the clearing. A small, decrepit cabin stood in the middle, its windows boarded up and its door hanging ajar, creaking in the wind. I stopped dead in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. The place felt wrong, so wrong. The air was thick with the scent of moss and decay, and the darkened outline of the cabin seemed to breathe with an unnatural life. This is it, Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. This is where it all started. I stared at the cabin, my mind reeling, but before I could respond, Lena pulled me inside. The air in the cabin was stale, heavy with dust, as if it hadn't been disturbed in decades. The walls were lined with shelves stacked high with old books, faded photographs, and strange artifacts I couldn't identify. But it was the table in the center of the room that caught my eye. A large wooden ledger lay open, its pages yellowed with age. And there, scrawled across the brittle paper, were names, too many names, each one written in an elegant script. I froze as I saw it: Mercy Atwood and Lena Holt. The letters seemed to burn into the page as I read them, as if the ink had been etched in blood. "This is where they've been keeping track of us," Lena muttered, her eyes wild. "They've been watching everyone, every forbidden love, every secret, and now they're going to use it against us." Her voice broke as she pointed to a small symbol at the bottom of the page, something I recognized. It was the same symbol that had been etched into the stained glass windows of the old church, the one that the pastor always referred to as a mark of purity. A symbol that, as a child, I had always been taught represented God's will. But now, seeing it here connected to our names, it felt like a curse, a brand meant to track us, to bind us to something dark and unforgiving. "You don't understand," Lena continued, her breath ragged. "This isn't just about us being together. This is about the power they have. This ledger, it's a map of every sin they've been watching, cataloging. They'll use it to control us, to destroy us. The town has been waiting for the right moment to strike, to expose everything." Her voice grew frantic, the weight of her words sinking in like stones in my chest. "And the worst part is they've already made their move. They've turned my own father against me, Mercy. He's one of them." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Lena's father, the pastor, the man who had stood at the pulpit every Sunday preaching about salvation, was a part of this twisted network. He was the one responsible for everything. The one who had been watching us from the very beginning. I felt sick, betrayed. The foundation of everything I had ever known, everything I had ever been taught, was crumbling beneath me. Lena was no longer just the girl I loved. She was the catalyst for a storm that was coming, one that we would have to face together, whether we were ready or not. "You need to leave," Lena whispered urgently, her voice trembling. "They'll come for us soon. We have to disappear, Mercy. The only way to survive is to leave everything behind, our families, our homes, everything." Her words sliced through me like a cruel truth I hadn't wanted to hear. I thought about my mother, about the life I had once known. The life that now seemed like a distant memory, already slipping through my fingers. But the thought of leaving Lena behind, of walking away from her, was impossible. The love I had for her was real, and it was the only thing that made sense in a world turned upside down. And so, without thinking, I took her hand, squeezing it tight, and nodded. "Then we'll go together, we'll fight this, we'll fight them all." Lena's eyes softened for the briefest moment, but there was no comfort in them, only fear, only a deep, undeniable certainty that the battle we were about to face would change everything. And as we turned to leave the cabin, I realized with an unsettling clarity that there was no going back. We didn't have a plan. We couldn't, there was no way to predict where they would strike, or how far the reach of their twisted network really extended. All we had was each other and the overwhelming need to escape, to disappear before they found us. As we made our way through the dense forest, our footsteps were muffled by the thick blanket of fallen leaves, but my mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Why had Lena's father turned on her? Why had he let this twisted web of control fester right under our noses, using the pulpit to preach about purity while secretly condemning us? What was worse, he had known. He had known from the very beginning, and now he was part of the system that had been watching, cataloging, and manipulating the very thing that had kept Lena and me tethered together, our love. By the time we reached the edge of town, the horizon was just beginning to lighten with the first signs of dawn, but the night felt endless. My heart thudded in my chest. Every rustle of the trees, every distant sound felt like a warning. "Do you have anywhere to go?" I asked Lena, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid to disturb the fragile silence between us. She shook her head. "No, I don't even know where to start." There was a sadness in her eyes, regret maybe, but also a quiet resolve. I knew that she wasn't just running from her father or the church. She was running from a lifetime of being trapped in the lies they had built around us. "We'll find somewhere," I told her, my voice firm. "Together we'll figure it out." But even as the words left my lips, I knew that finding somewhere wasn't enough. There was no escape from the past, from the town we had grown up in, from the chains of history and tradition that had been built around us. I knew that Lena and I were no longer just running from our families or the town's judgment. We were running from a system, from a world that would never accept us. As much as we might try to outrun it, it would always find us. And then, just as I was about to voice my fear, a car's headlights pierced the dark and my heart nearly stopped. At first, I thought it was just another vehicle passing by, but the car slowed and I knew. I knew before I saw the face that emerged from the driver's side window that it was too late. The past had finally caught up to us. Lena's hand shot out, gripping mine with a strength that felt almost desperate. "No," she whispered, "it's them, they've found us." The voice that came from the car was unmistakable. It was Pastor Holt, Lena's father. His voice was cold, mechanical, like a stranger's. "Get in the car, Lena, now." I could feel the weight of his presence even though he was still several feet away, like an invisible force tightening around us. He wasn't the man I had known, the man who had preached at the church every Sunday. No, this was someone else, someone who had given up everything for the sake of power, someone who had embraced the darkness that thrived in the shadows of the town. And as I looked at Lena, her face a mixture of defiance and terror, I realized something that made my blood run cold. We weren't just pawns in their game. We were the final pieces, pieces they were willing to destroy to maintain control. Lena's voice broke through the stillness. "I won't go with you," she said, her words steady but trembling with something else, rage. "I'll never go back to that church, not after what you've done." Her defiance was everything I had hoped for in her, everything I had believed in, but I saw the way her father's eyes narrowed. I saw the way his fingers curled around the steering wheel, and in that moment I knew that the choice we were facing wasn't just about running or hiding. It was about standing our ground, even if it meant risking everything. He smiled then, cold and empty, and I knew the battle we had been running from had just begun. The town, the church, and everything they stood for were coming for us. But Lena and I, despite the weight of everything pressing down on us, were real. Our love was real. And no matter how much they tried to break us, to tear us apart, I would never stop fighting for her. Because in the end, we weren't just two girls running. We were a revolution, whether we were ready or not. And maybe that was the real reason they had to stop us. Because love like ours was uncontrollable. And if it was real, if it survived, nothing could ever be the same again.